Chapter 4. Completed. We can say without fear of erring in our trial that the most important order of mercenaries that has existed in Almera was the Order of the Blue Phoenix. There is no doubt about its trajectory, members who were part of it and influence on the history of Shanaris and Almera. History of Almera, Volume 2. Autora, Mariana Games. Although Agnoruk in the last decade had traveled extensively throughout Shanaris, he had never returned to Almera since leaving the company. He was pleasantly surprised by the changes in the city. The council had decided to make reforms in the port to allow a better distribution of the docked vessels. Now there was no longer the chaos of before when it came to loading and unloading goods. In addition, a secondary port had been created inside the mouth of the Nartalan River where a series of shipyards were also located for the repair and construction of ships. They disembarked without major inconvenience. The activity in the port was frenetic as always. The dockers went up and down with weapons, food, and other provisions. Some of those present greeted Kush and Arian. The half-orc quickly recognized the emblem of the company. They were preparing an expedition, that was for sure, and on a fairly large scale. His companions did not mention anything. In Almera there were ears and eyes on every corner. Once they left the port, they walked in a straight line until they reached the so-called Via de las Campanias, the nerve center of Almera. A large avenue ran through the entire city parallel to the river Nartalan. This avenue was where all the headquarters of the important mercenary companies were located. Except for the fire sword that was located further east, this company never found a place on the main road. They quickly arrived at the headquarters of the Blue Phoenix Company. As it was one of the first to be founded, it was located in an unbeatable place, near the port, the market, and the headquarters of the council. Along the avenue were many stalls and shops that grew in the shadow of the mercenary barracks. The shops sold weapons, clothes, food, and some sellers of magical objects were also looking for business. Taverns and inns were just as numerous. The abundance of these establishments was greater the closer one approached the port. The market was located a little further inland, close to the river and the river port. If one advanced in the direction of the outskirts of Almera, the shops gave way to the homes of the shipyard or forge workers, who were located on the outskirts of the city. But the company route reached beyond the outside of Almera, even ending up crossing the old wall of Roslin, an old wall that protected the city since before the times when Almera had not achieved its independence. Almera was expanding more and more every day, and with reason. The number of mercenary companies was the largest in its history, and they always had work. The gold flowed and attracted anyone who could offer their services to the mercenaries. Despite so many warriors, it was a very safe, quiet, and stable city. The peace pact that reigned in Almera between the mercenaries was respected. The penalty for disobeying it was death, which made it an attractive and safe place for many when looking for a future. The company's headquarters had also undergone some renovations. The gold was noticeable, the result of the successes under the direction of Debok. The walls were higher and the main gate wider. The two guards guarding the entrance squared up at the sight of Arian and Kush. No matter how much peace and tranquility reigned in Almera, the truth is that no one trusted the other companies at all. Agnoruk then entered, followed by Vanus and Arian's apprentice. The half-orc encountered a scene that was not expected. Basically, the main courtyard was as usual, with the barracks at the back, the stable on the left and the bathrooms and the armory on the right. The center used to be located in the center when they had to carry out the instruction, although there was a large basement to carry out the more specialized training. In the middle of the courtyard stood a huge crowd of soldiers clapping and kneeling before two denkis and a girl. Arian did not hide his anger at the sight of the pantomime, while Kush smiled sarcastically. Nothing surprised him anymore. The little Denka raised his arms, clapping his hands, urging the rest of those present to show respect, while the other, a huge Denka of more than 3 meters, carrying the little girl sitting on his left shoulder as if it were a throne. The little girl smiled pleasantly. "Vassals, say hello to the Black Queen." Gosberg shouted as the amused mercenaries knelt in respect. "Get down on your knees, you bastards! Or the Black Queen will cut off your head." The Denka walked nimbly, dodging those who knelt beside him. "Yes. I'll cut off all of your heads," announced the girl, laughing. Hearing that was the straw that broke the camel's back of Arian's patience, his cheeks turned red. "Gosberg, you can tell from the gods what the hell you're playing." It was a good shout-out and caused all the activity in the courtyard to stop. Everyone turned their attention to the newcomers. The mercenaries who were kneeling immediately got up in fear, until Sabu stopped and took the little girl from where he had placed her to leave her on the ground. The only one who seemed not to be disturbed was the little Denka, who with total tranquility and parsimony began to walk towards the angry priestess. But Arian did not wait for his arrival and hurried towards the tumult next to Kush, who did not take the smile off his mouth. Agnoruk shook his head. Gosberg would never change. "What do you teach my daughter?" "Arian." "Happy return. We were just playing the Black Queen." "The Black Queen?" Sabu, as always, brought the girl with his huge arms to Arian, who took her and hugged her with immense affection. "Mum." He played the Black Queen with Uncle Gosberg. The priestess's face changed when she held the girl in her arms. "The Black Queen? If I'm the Black Queen, I have to rule them all, and whoever doesn't want to." The little girl made the gesture of running her hand around her neck, to the laughter of everyone. "No. No. Don't listen to Uncle Gosberg, who is an exaggerator. Kings don't have to cut off anyone's head. Only those who misbehave." The little girl asked, before the stern gaze of her mother, who then cast a glance at Gosberg who, if she could, would turn him to dust at that moment. Kush left the group to inform Dabok of his arrival, while the mercenaries dispersed. Gosberg decided to go and greet Agnoruk to escape Arian's reproaches. "Agnoruk! What a half-orc time!" Gosberg gave him a warm hug that surprised the half-orc, the Denka exaggerating things to see if he would get out of the situation. "More than 2 years. Agnoruk replied. "Saludos, Agnoruk." The half-orc turned. Sabu's hoarse voice appealed to him. Many were surprised to see Sabu talking, since the huge Denka did not usually talk much. With Sabu the greeting was more affectionate. They had not seen each other much longer. "Your father could have come for me instead of sending Vanis." Sabu cast a reproachful glance at Gosberg and sighed. Arian approached the girl, who was making fun of the Kendeli with whom he had a great relationship. Arian explained the absence of Denka. "He is too busy sneaking out at night to drink and gamble in the harbor taverns. We offered you to come with us. He was one of the few who knew how to get to your home, but he recommended that Vanis go instead, since according to him, he had more important things to do." Gosberg lit a cigarette. "And as you can see, you were able to bring him back." Then the girl first noticed the presence of the half-orc and was surprised. "What's up, Ariana? Don't know who he is." The girl smiled shyly at her mother. "His name is Agnoruk. Long ago he saved your father's life from a soul-eater and helped your mother." Yes. Of course, Ariana. He is the half-orc who fought alongside the Amazons." Gosberg commented to help her. The girl then began to remember the stories she had been told since she was little. "Is it who the black harpy bit in the ass when she was pooping?" "The same." "Gosberg, you told the girl about me." Agnoruk turned to the Denka angrily. Gosberg escaped from the half-orc's vicinity to stand behind the little girl and Arian. "Don't listen to him, you know, kids make up every single thing." "Yes, Tito Gosberg tells me that story many times. They had to sew up your ass and you couldn't sit down for a month." Arian began to laugh along with the girl. "Maldito Denka." Agnoruk went to hunt Gosberg, but thanks to his agility he escaped the half-orc's attempt to capture it, to the laughter of the little girl. "Enough is enough, Ariana. Say hello to Agnoruk properly." Arion reproached his daughter's behavior and left her on the floor. Then Arion brought the girl to the half-orc, who offered her his hand, and the little girl took it with hers. Now that I had it. Nearby, Agnoruk could see the two pointy little ears that protruded from her black hair. The hair was like her mother's. In his mouth there were also some tusks that betrayed his orcish ancestry. Ariana uth Aris uth Arakabaras uth Arakanek. Agnoruk smiled in surprise. Even his great-grandfather knows how to present himself in Orc. One of his uncles showed it to him and he liked the truth. The girl turned to her mother. We must honor the kings, mother. Arion shook his head. You and the kings. I'll talk to your uncles and Gosberg about the things they tell you. And your name in Orc? Ariana asked the half-orc. Agnoruk smiled. Agnoruk uth Agnek. Don't know more. The girl was a little disappointed. My father never told me about my Orc grandparents. I like you, you're handsome. Ariana. Arion smiled again at the girl's sass. They were talking animatedly when Kush returned. I just spoke to Debok, he's in a preparatory meeting, but he wants you to come up and see him immediately. Arion left the child in the care of Vanus and Anthra. You will tell me about the trip later, Mom. Begged the little girl. Yes, Ariana, I'll tell you about the trip. They said goodbye to Sabu, who due to his size could not enter the buildings. As usual with him, Gosberg joined as a guest. They were so used to it that they didn't even bother to say that he should leave. And Kritus. The dwarf is next to Aroas, the chief gunsmith. They want to make some modifications to the design of the crossbows. Gosberg replied as he said goodbye to Ariana. Gulak, Mulak and Ulak. Gulak is at the meeting. Mulak, who went to the port, will surely be supervising the activities on the ships, and Ulak is traveling. He should return in these days. It was Kush who was responding now as they entered the building. Ulak is on a journey in the Black Empire, visiting the Golden Plains. Arion added as they climbed the stairs to Debok's office. He believed that they were banished for life by the Emperor. Agnoruk couldn't hide his surprise at Ulak's presence on the plains, when in theory returning there was a death sentence for Aris and his cousins. Some things have changed, Agnoruk. Arion commented enigmatically. They passed by Debok's office, the place where Agnoruk had said goodbye to the company more than a decade ago. Indeed, some things had changed inside the barracks. They had expanded them and the number of mercenaries was much greater. As you can see, there is a lot of movement. When you left we were no more than 600 mercenaries, but after Tripulia, the fame was greater and the demands for our services enormous. We doubled the number, but in the face of the next Iron War, we have needed to double that amount. Kush spoke with a certain pride about these novelties. 3,000 mercenaries. A small army. Agnoruk said. That the king of Demember pays very generously. Arion didn't seem too happy with these last words from Gosberg. They entered a large room, which did not exist in the old barracks. Inside there was a huge table where all the captains were seated with Debok, Mulak and some other members of the company. Debok, Aris rose to greet them. They greeted Agnoruk and Kush warmly. Aris kissed Arion as Gosberg stood at the back of the table, took a seat and put his boots on the table and lit another cigarette. Make yourself comfortable, Gosberg, please. Thank you from Bok. Everyone shook their heads, but they were used to it. Welcome, Agnoruk, please take a seat. The mercenary pointed to some chairs that were free in front of them. Arion sat next to Aris, Kush in the middle, and Agnoruk in the chair closest to Gosberg. Well, normally I would deal with this matter as you all know in person with Agnoruk, but time is of the essence. In 2 weeks we should have all the preparations ready and the troops embark towards the Dragon Ridge. Debok paused, Gosberg scratching his ear as he interrupted the veteran warrior. So as you have surely been informed by Agnoruk, we need all the mercenaries available. The truth is that it was so long since you left that Debok had forgotten your name. But thanks to my suggestion he remembered it again. We couldn't waste one of Shannari's greatest warriors. Agnoruk looked at Gosberg with some anger, the Denka as always messing things up. Don't be sulphurous, the truth is that we need you, Agnoruk. Plus, you have a contract to keep, and you don't like to go back on your word. With that last sentence Gosberg allowed Debok to continue with his speech. He was a little annoyed by the interruption, but he managed to focus again on what he had to say. First of all, the presentations. You already know Loranthas, Aris, Kush, Arian, and Mulak, you don't need to introduce them to you. We have another Captain Silkari, a former captain of the Royal Guard of Tame. You should also remember Bantirium, head of the company's quartermaster. Silkari was a petite woman, but with a strong build, short wavy hair, small eyes, and a scar under her left eye. The warrior smiled slightly when she saw the half-orc. Bantirium, a man who comfortably passed middle age, sported a well-bushed blonde mustache that compensated for the absence of hair on his head. Tall and robustly built, was a member of the company for more than 3 decades and was completely trusted by Debok and Gosberg. Bantirium was unfazed by Agnoruk's presence. I'll be blunt, we have 3,000 mercenaries and right now there are 4 captains, Loranthas, Kush, Aris and Silkari. Each one with command over 500 mercenaries. I will take command of another 500, but there were another 500 without a captain. As soon as Agnoruk signs his return I will make him captain. Arian smiled satisfied, Kush's gesture was one of approval, Aris nodded. They waited for the news, not so much Loranthas, Silkari and Bantirium who did not hide their amazement. Since a captain had never been appointed as soon as she arrived, for example, in the case of Silkari, the warrior had to wait more than a year to be promoted despite being highly qualified. Although the most surprised was the half-orc himself, he expected the usual, to be one more, to fight on the front line and that's it. This was a much greater responsibility. Don't worry, I'll be in his company. There is nothing to fear. Gosberg spoke calmly, while making it clear that the decision had his full approval. Anyone who had been with the company for a long time knew that if Gosberg authorized it, there was nothing to discuss. Well, once this has been notified, I would like to meet alone with the half-orc to sign the relevant contracts. Tomorrow at dawn we will meet here again to discuss the progressives. But Debok could not continue, huge screams interrupted him, something was happening outside. An attack? That was impossible. In Almera fights between mercenaries with weapons were forbidden under penalty of death. Except in the case that the duel was approved by the council. They all ran out to the parade ground. Upon arrival, they encountered 12 members of the Fire Sword Company who were exchanging pushes with some of their mercenaries, while a middle-aged woman screamed. Where's that damn Denka? Where's that old sack of fleas and the mummy that protects it, Debok? The veteran mercenary left at a brisk pace accompanied by Kush and Arian. They all knew Arisa. She must have been a little younger than Debok. She was one of the best mercenaries in Almera. He was captain in the company of the Blue Phoenix, but when Debok's father handed over the position of general to his son, Arisa did not take it very well. She considered herself much more capable and left the company to go to the fiercest rival, the company of the Flaming Sword, where thanks to her good work she ended up rising to the rank of general. From then on, the tensions and competition of Debok and Arisa were known to all. What bellows Arisa? You got me here. The woman turned and walked steadily toward Debok, escorted by her men. Tell that sack of fleas to stop fleecing my men and beating them. I have 20 of my best mercenaries in the infirmary. Debok scratched his head. Kush looked for Gosberg, but as was usual when he was sought, the Denka was never usually there. What kind of people do you hire, Arisa? One night in Almera is enough to know that you should never play with the sack of fleas at cards. Then a mountain jumped from behind Arisa to face Debok and push him. He was a huge being, captain of the Burning Sword. They called him Almazed, the Neckbreaker. He had only been in the company for a short time, but he was cruel enough to rise quickly, until he became Arisa's right-hand man. "Old man, I want to see that Denka. He broke both of my brother's legs." Hitting a general was the greatest insult that could be done in Almera. All the mercenaries went on the defensive. In Almera, although fights were forbidden, there was a certain tolerance in the taverns, as long as it was not a very scandalous thing, fights without weapons and with few participants. "If you have any problems, report the case to the Board of Companies." Arisa smiled contemptuously. "Always shielding yourself in legality. You're a worm. Get out of here. You know, Albiona has paid us double our fee." Arisa spoke proudly. "Then we'll see you on the battlefield." Debok replied ironically. Almazed turned and with his elbow hit Debok's face, who fell to the ground. Smiling, Almazed snapped at him without looking at him. "You're too old for that." It was the straw that broke the camel's back. Aris was about to jump, but Arian managed to grab it, Silkri and Loranthas too, although they were stopped by Kush. Meanwhile, Vanus and Anthra helped Debok to get up, who was shaking the dirt off his uniform. "Oh, sorry. It was a clumsiness of mine, I'm very big. None of us here have the balls to do anything. It's a company of shitty larvae." Almazed strutted at the smile of Arisa and the rest of his companions. They had a good excuse. If someone attacked him, the complaint would cause a serious sanction to the company of the Blue Phoenix. Then it came out of nowhere. Arian and Kush had already seen it in action in Snowy Valley, but it surprised them again. The rest they saw now. The punch went straight to the chin of Almazed, who was thrown 5 meters. Everyone paid attention to Agnoruk, who showed a sarcastic half-smile. "This is a provocation. It was an accident. It's going to cost you a fortune." Arisa exclaimed indignantly. As Almazed rose quickly to head for the half-orc, Agnoruk ran toward his rival with determination. When the fight seemed inevitable, a rain of daggers that landed in the middle of the two and a huge grey arm pushed Almazed, who ended up landing with his comrades, who all fell like simple bowling alleys. "Well, enough is enough. You're..." Arisa exclaimed. There was Gosberg as always, lighting a cigarette, while his son stood next to him, threatening Arisa's mercenaries who were heavily incorporating Almazed. "Stupid Denka. I'm glad to see you too, Arisa. I'm going to denounce you for the attack on my captain." "You are not going to report anything." "What do you mean?" "Agnoruk has not signed anything. He is not a member of the company, so he is not under the rules of the mercenaries." Agnoruk approached the Denka. "If you want, I'll go get a sword and we'll fix it now. For me there is no problem." Arisa turned red with rage, something that Debok remembered with some sympathy. Gosberg had always liked to provoke her. "Gosberg will pay me altogether someday." But Arisa was not stupid. She had tried to provoke them and almost succeeded. Now he could only lose more than gain, so he started walking towards the exit. "We're leaving," he ordered Almazed, but the latter wanted more than to break Agnoruk's head right now. Arisa tapped him on the shoulder to make him obey his order immediately. "Yes," accepted the huge mercenary resignedly. The mercenaries of the Flaming Sword began to retreat following their general. Outside the barracks, many more comrades in arms were crowded waiting for events. Gosberg threw the cigar at the back of Almazed's neck. "Don't worry, Almazed, in Anim you will be able to achieve a fate far more disastrous than that of your crippled brother." Arian put his hands to his head, as Almazed turned around in a rage, as the mercenaries outside entered the barracks. And in the parade ground the Rosary of Dawn was assembled.